You may have been told that sardines are one of the ultimate superfoods for longevity. They are rich in omega-3 fats, high-quality protein, and important micronutrients, so choosing them makes sense. Many adults do exactly that. They eat sardines regularly. They try to do everything right for their health. And yet, something unexpected still happens beneath the surface. Even with those habits in place, muscle loss often continues to progress quietly. By the time many people reach their early 60s, close to 30% of their muscle mass is already gone, and most never felt a clear warning sign along the way. That quiet progression is what makes this issue so important. Sarcopenia is not simply about feeling a little weaker or having less strength in your arms and legs. Muscle is not cosmetic tissue. It is one of the most powerful metabolic organs in the human body. Your muscles help determine how well you control blood sugar after meals, how efficiently you burn fat for energy, and how precisely your hormones communicate with one another. When muscle mass declines, the consequences extend far beyond strength. Blood sugar becomes harder to regulate, fat is stored more easily, especially around the abdomen and the liver, hormonal signals lose their clarity, and over time, aging accelerates from the inside out. This is why focusing only on calories or cardiovascular fitness is not enough as we grow older. Muscle is central to metabolic health, independence, and resilience. Preserving it is not about aesthetics. It is about maintaining the internal systems that keep the body stable and adaptable with age. If you care about staying strong, independent, and metabolically healthy as you age, stay with me. To understand why muscle loss matters so much, we need to look at what muscle actually does inside the body. Skeletal muscle makes up roughly 40% of total body weight, which already tells us this is not a minor tissue. It is a major organ system, constantly active, constantly communicating with your metabolism. When we talk about metabolic health, muscle is one of the main control centers. Every time you eat carbohydrates, whether that is a slice of bread, a bowl of rice, or fruit, your body breaks those carbohydrates down into glucose. That glucose must be handled efficiently. Healthy muscle tissue acts like a large storage reservoir. It pulls glucose out of the bloodstream and stores it as glycogen, keeping blood sugar levels stable after meals. The more muscle you have, and the healthier it is, the more effectively this system works. This is why people with stronger muscle mass often tolerate carbohydrates better without sharp spikes in blood sugar. As muscle mass declines, that storage capacity shrinks. When muscle becomes smaller and less responsive, glucose has fewer places to go. More of it stays in the bloodstream, which forces the body to release higher levels of insulin. Over time, cells become less responsive to insulin, a state we recognize as insulin resistance. Excess glucose is then redirected into fat storage, particularly in the liver and around the abdomen, which further worsens metabolic health. Muscle also plays a central role in fat burning. Even at rest, muscle tissue consumes energy. It increases your resting metabolic rate and helps determine how efficiently you burn fat throughout the day. When muscle mass is lost, the metabolic engine slows down. Fat becomes easier to gain and harder to burn, even if calorie intake has not changed. This is why muscle is not just about movement or strength, it is a metabolic regulator. When muscle is preserved, blood sugar control improves, insulin sensitivity stays higher, and fat metabolism remains more flexible. When muscle is lost, those systems begin to drift out of balance, setting the stage for many of the metabolic challenges associated with aging. Beginning in midlife, muscle loss often starts quietly. From around the age of 40, adults who are not actively protecting their muscle can lose close to 1% of muscle mass each year. At first, that change feels insignificant. Daily activities still feel manageable, and strength seems mostly intact. But year after year, that gradual loss accumulates. By the time many people reach their 70s, it is not uncommon to have lost 20 to 30% of their lean muscle tissue. That loss has profound consequences for how the body ages. As muscle mass declines, metabolic rate slows. The body burns fewer calories at rest, which makes fat gain easier even when eating habits have not changed. This extra fat, particularly visceral fat, around the organs further disrupts metabolism by increasing inflammation and worsening insulin resistance. Aging, in this context, is not just about time passing. It is about the compounding effects of metabolic slowdown. Muscle loss also changes how the body handles stress and recovery. With less muscle, blood sugar control becomes less stable, energy levels fluctuate more, and physical resilience declines. Small stressors, whether illness, injury, or inactivity, have a greater impact because the body has fewer metabolic reserves to draw from. This is one reason why loss of muscle is so closely tied to frailty later in life. Research has consistently shown that lower muscle mass is associated with higher all-cause mortality. In contrast, individuals who maintain higher levels of muscle as they age tend to live longer and remain more functionally independent. Muscle is also linked to brain health. Higher muscle mass is associated with better insulin signaling and lower inflammation, both of which support cognitive resilience and help protect memory and mental clarity over time. This is why muscle loss accelerates aging at multiple levels. It slows metabolism, promotes fat gain, increases vulnerability to chronic disease, and reduces the body's ability to adapt. Preserving muscle, on the other hand, helps maintain metabolic stability, physical strength, and cognitive function well into older age. When people hear the word sarcopenia, it is often explained as a simple consequence of getting older, as if muscle loss were tied only to the calendar. In reality, sarcopenia is not driven by age alone. It is a physiological process shaped by very specific biological changes that unfold gradually inside the body. Understanding these changes is essential because they explain why muscle loss accelerates even in people who believe they are eating well. One of the central mechanisms is something called anabolic resistance. Earlier in life, muscle tissue responds efficiently to protein and physical activity. A moderate protein-rich meal combined with movement sends a clear signal to muscle cells to repair and grow. As we age, that signal weakens. Muscle cells no longer respond to protein with the same sensitivity. The same meal that once stimulated muscle building now produces a much smaller response. Instead of being directed toward repair and growth, a larger portion of dietary protein is oxidized for energy or simply wasted. The building blocks are present, but the construction process slows. Hormonal changes further contribute to this resistance. Hormones such as testosterone, growth hormone, and estrogen play an important role in maintaining muscle tissue. As levels of these hormones decline with age, the anabolic signal becomes quieter. Muscle protein synthesis slows, while protein breakdown becomes more dominant. This shift does not happen overnight, but over years, it tilts the balance toward loss rather than maintenance. At the same time, chronic low-grade inflammation begins to rise. Inflammatory signals interfere directly with muscle-building pathways and accelerate muscle breakdown. This inflammation is often driven by excess body fat, poor dietary patterns, disrupted sleep, and metabolic stress. As muscle mass declines, fat mass tends to increase, especially visceral fat around the organs. That fat releases additional inflammatory molecules which further impair muscle function. A vicious cycle begins to form. Insulin resistance is another key piece of this process. Insulin is not only responsible for managing blood sugar, it also helps shuttle amino acids into muscle cells. When muscle becomes resistant to insulin, it becomes less responsive to protein as well. This dual resistance worsens anabolic resistance and deepens muscle loss. Finally, reduced physical activity compounds everything. Muscle is a use it or lose it tissue. Even small reductions in daily movement weaken the signal that tells muscle to stay strong. Over time, less activity means less stimulation, which further accelerates the decline. Together, these factors explain how sarcopenia actually develops. It is not simply aging on a calendar. It is the result of anabolic resistance, hormonal shifts, inflammation, insulin resistance, and reduced movement reinforcing one another. The encouraging truth is that because these drivers are biological and behavioral, they can be addressed with targeted strategies grounded in science. Many older adults reach a confusing point in their health journey. They are eating more protein than they did when they were younger. They are choosing chicken, fish, yogurt, even protein shakes, and yet muscle strength continues to slip. This leads to a natural question. If protein builds muscle, why does eating more of it stop working with age? The answer lies not in quantity alone, but in sensitivity. As we age, muscle tissue becomes less responsive to protein. This is a hallmark of anabolic resistance. The digestive system may still absorb amino acids, but muscle cells no longer receive or interpret the signal with the same clarity. The message that once said repair and build now arrives muffled. As a result, much of the protein consumed is diverted toward energy production or oxidized rather than being used to rebuild muscle tissue. This is why simply increasing protein intake often fails to produce results in older adults. The issue is not a lack of raw material, it is a signaling problem. Muscle growth requires a precise biological signal to turn on the machinery of protein synthesis. Without that signal, even high protein intake does not translate into stronger muscle. What makes this more challenging is that not all proteins send the same signal. Different protein sources contain different amino acid profiles. Muscle cells are especially responsive to specific amino acids that act as metabolic messengers. Without the right profile, the muscle-building switch remains partially off regardless of how much protein is consumed. This explains why many people feel frustrated despite doing what they believe is right. Eating more protein alone is often not enough. What matters is whether the protein delivers the correct amino acid signal in a form that aging muscle can still recognize and respond to. Unlocking muscle growth at this stage of life requires understanding not just how much protein you eat, but how that protein communicates with your muscle cells. When people think about foods that support muscle and longevity, sardines often come to mind, and for good reason. They provide omega-3 fats and quality protein. But there is another food, far more common and often underestimated, that rivals sardines when it comes to supporting muscle health as we age. That food is the whole egg. For decades, eggs have been misunderstood. Many older adults were advised to limit them, avoid the yolk, or see them as less ideal than other protein sources. From a muscle biology perspective, however, whole eggs are one of the most complete and efficient proteins available. They contain all 9 essential amino acids in proportions that closely match what human muscle tissue requires for repair and rebuilding. This balance matters because muscle does not respond to protein in isolation. It responds to patterns. Scientists use a measure called biological value to assess how efficiently the body can use a protein. Whole eggs score extremely high on this scale at roughly 94 out of 100. That means a large percentage of the protein you consume from eggs can actually be utilized by your body, rather than being wasted or oxidized. For aging muscle, this efficiency becomes increasingly important. Another advantage of eggs is digestibility. As we get older, digestion can become less robust, which affects how well protein is broken down and absorbed. Eggs are gentle on the digestive system and deliver amino acids in a form that the body can access quickly and effectively. This makes them especially useful for older adults who may struggle with heavier protein sources. Eggs are also practical. They are affordable, widely available, and easy to prepare in many different ways. You do not need specialty products or expensive supplements to access this level of protein quality. A simple carton of eggs provides a reliable, accessible tool for supporting muscle health. This is why whole eggs deserve attention in the conversation about sarcopenia. They are not a second-tier option. From a biological standpoint, they offer a complete amino acid profile, high efficiency, and real-world accessibility, making them a powerful ally in protecting muscle as we age. At this point, a common question comes up. If eggs are such a powerful protein source, wouldn't egg whites alone be enough? After all, the whites contain most of the protein. This seems logical, but when we look at how muscle biology actually works, the answer becomes clearer. Whole eggs consistently stimulate muscle protein synthesis more effectively than egg whites alone, even when the total protein content is the same. The difference lies in the yolk. The yolk is not just fat or cholesterol. It contains critical nutrients that act as metabolic cofactors for muscle growth. Vitamin D in the yolk supports muscle function and strength, particularly in older adults where deficiency is common. Choline plays a role in muscle cell signaling and nerve communication. Phospholipids help maintain the integrity of muscle cell membranes, allowing nutrients and signals to move efficiently into the cell. These components do not build muscle on their own, but they enable protein to do its job more effectively. Research has shown that when older adults consume whole eggs, muscle protein synthesis is significantly higher than when they consume egg whites alone, even if the protein amount is matched. This tells us that muscle does not respond only to grams of protein. It responds to the full nutritional context in which that protein is delivered. A simple way to understand this is through analogy. The protein in egg whites provides the bricks needed to build muscle tissue. The yolk provides the mortar. Without the mortar, the bricks may be present, but the structure is weaker and less stable. With the mortar, the building process becomes more efficient and resilient. For older adults, this distinction matters. Aging muscle already struggles with anabolic resistance. Removing the yolk strips away nutrients that help overcome that resistance. Unless there is a specific medical reason advised by a physician, choosing whole eggs instead of egg whites offers a more complete and biologically effective approach to supporting muscle health. Now that we understand why whole eggs are so effective, we need to look one level deeper at the biology that makes this possible. The key player here is an amino acid called leucine. Leucine is not just a building block of protein. It functions as a signal. In many ways, it acts like an ignition key inside your muscle cells. When leucine levels rise in the bloodstream after a protein-rich meal, they activate a critical pathway known as the mTOR pathway. This pathway is responsible for turning on muscle protein synthesis. Without sufficient leucine, this pathway remains only partially active, no matter how much total protein you consume. The raw materials may be present, but the construction process does not fully begin. As we age, this signaling system becomes less sensitive. Younger muscle can respond to smaller amounts of leucine, but older muscle requires a stronger signal to overcome anabolic resistance. Research consistently shows that older adults typically need about 2.5 to 3 grams of leucine in a single meal to fully activate muscle protein synthesis. Falling below that threshold often results in a muted response. This is where food choices become important. One large egg contains roughly 0.5 gram of leucine. On its own, that is not enough to flip the switch. But when eggs are combined thoughtfully with other high-quality protein sources, the threshold becomes reachable. Pairing eggs with Greek yogurt, chicken, fish, or similar proteins creates a leucine-rich meal that aging muscle can still recognize and respond to. Think of leucine as the command that tells your muscle cells it is time to build and repair. Protein provides the materials, but leucine delivers the instruction. When the signal is strong enough, muscle protein synthesis turns on. When it is too weak, much of the protein you eat is diverted elsewhere. This is why spreading protein evenly across meals and ensuring each meal contains enough leucine matters more than simply increasing daily totals. By reaching the leucine threshold multiple times per day, you repeatedly activate the muscle-building machinery. Over time, those repeated signals add up to meaningful preservation and rebuilding of muscle even later in life. Up to this point, we have talked about nutrition and the role of protein and leucine in turning on muscle building, but there is a critical piece that must be added for this process to work fully, especially as we age. That piece is resistance training. Exercise is not simply a way to burn calories. It is a biological signal. When you challenge your muscles against resistance, whether through weights, bands, or bodyweight movements, you create a mechanical message inside the muscle fibers that says adaptation is required. During resistance training, muscle fibers experience tension and microscopic stress. This is not damage in a harmful sense. It is the trigger that tells your body to prepare for repair and strengthening. Think of exercise as setting the stage. It opens the door and makes muscle tissue receptive. Without that signal, even the best nutrition struggles to produce meaningful results. Protein comes in as the building material. After resistance exercise, muscle cells become more sensitive to amino acids. This period is often called the anabolic window. For many years, it was believed to be very narrow. We now understand that this window is broader, lasting roughly 2 to 3 hours after training. During this time, consuming a protein-rich, leucine-containing meal significantly amplifies muscle protein synthesis. The mechanical signal from exercise and the nutritional signal from protein reinforce each other. This synergy is especially powerful for older adults. Studies show that combining resistance training with post-workout protein intake can dramatically increase the muscle-building response compared to protein alone. Exercise restores some of the lost sensitivity that comes with anabolic resistance, making aging muscle behave more like younger tissue, at least temporarily. The encouraging news is that this does not require extreme training. 2 to 3 resistance training sessions per week are enough to create meaningful benefits. The goal is consistency, not intensity. Movements that engage large muscle groups, such as squats, step-ups, rows, or push-ups, provide a strong signal even when performed at a moderate level. When resistance training prepares the muscle and protein supplies the necessary building blocks, the body responds efficiently. Together, they form a partnership that reactivates muscle growth pathways, helps preserve strength, and supports metabolic health. Neither element reaches its full potential alone. Combined, they create an effect that is greater than the sum of its parts. Up to this point, we have focused on what to add: better protein, the right amino acids, and resistance training. But for many older adults, progress stalls not because they are missing something, but because something in the background is quietly interfering. These hidden disruptors can undermine muscle health even when nutrition and exercise look solid on paper. One of the most powerful disruptors is poor sleep. Muscle repair does not primarily happen during your workout. It happens at night during deep sleep. This is when the body releases growth hormone, one of the most important hormones for tissue repair and muscle maintenance. When sleep is shortened or fragmented, growth hormone drops and cortisol rises. Cortisol is a stress hormone that actively breaks down muscle protein. Even a few nights of poor sleep can blunt the muscle-building response to both exercise and protein the following day. Another overlooked factor is liver health. The liver plays a central role in amino acid metabolism. It helps process protein, regulate insulin, and distribute nutrients where they are needed. When the liver accumulates excess fat, a condition known as fatty liver, its ability to handle amino acids efficiently declines. In that state, even high-quality protein is not used as effectively for muscle repair. Amino acids are diverted away from muscle and toward energy production or storage instead. Chronic low-grade inflammation is another quiet saboteur. Inflammation acts like rust on metal. It does not cause immediate collapse, but over time it weakens structure from the inside. Inflammatory signals interfere with muscle-building pathways and accelerate protein breakdown. This inflammation is often driven by excess visceral fat, poor diet quality, metabolic stress, or unresolved sleep issues. Sedentary behavior also plays a larger role than most people realize. Even individuals who exercise a few times per week can lose muscle if the rest of the day is spent sitting. This is where non-exercise activity, often called NEAT, becomes important. Regular movement throughout the day, standing, walking, changing positions, keeps muscle tissue metabolically active and insulin sensitive. In many cases, this daily movement matters nearly as much as formal exercise. Finally, micronutrient deficiencies can slow muscle repair. Muscle protein synthesis depends on vitamins and minerals, such as vitamin D, magnesium, zinc, and B vitamins. When these are low, the enzymatic processes that build muscle become less efficient, even if protein intake is adequate. The key takeaway is simple. You can press the accelerator with protein and training, but if these hidden disruptors are present, it is like driving with the brakes on. Addressing sleep, liver health, inflammation, daily movement, and micronutrient status removes those brakes and allows your muscle-building efforts to work as they should. As we bring everything together, the central message becomes clear. Muscle is not just tissue that helps you move or lift. It is one of the body's most powerful anti-aging organs. It supports blood sugar control, fat metabolism, hormone balance, and physical independence. Protecting muscle is not an optional part of healthy aging. It is foundational. Sarcopenia, the age-related loss of muscle, is often described as unavoidable. The science tells a different story. Muscle loss is not simply the result of time passing. It is driven by specific biological signals, and those signals can be influenced. With the right approach, decline can be slowed, and in many cases, strength and function can be rebuilt well into later decades of life. The path forward does not require extreme measures. It rests on a few evidence-based principles applied consistently. Each meal should provide high-quality protein that aging muscle can actually use. Within that protein, reaching the leucine threshold matters because leucine is the signal that turns on muscle repair and growth. Resistance training provides the mechanical message that prepares muscle to respond, and it does not need to be daily or intense to be effective. 2 to 3 sessions per week are enough when done consistently. Just as important is removing one hidden disruptor. Improving sleep, supporting liver health, reducing chronic inflammation, increasing daily movement, or correcting a key micronutrient deficiency can unlock progress that was previously blocked. When these elements work together, muscle becomes resilient again. Strength supports balance, balance supports independence, independence supports quality of life as you age. If this helped you understand how to protect your strength and independence, subscribe for more science-based guidance on healthy aging.